All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Potential Project. I'm your host, Sean Calhoun, and if you're here, it's because you're ready to reduce stress, burn stubborn fat, and get your body working with you instead of against you. On this podcast, we're all about simple, no BS strategies for fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle. This way, you can feel strong, confident, and in control. I'll give you the tools, mindset shifts, and habits to help you look and feel your best without spending hours in the gym or stressing over every single meal. Now, let's get into it. All right, we're back, guys, and I'm excited to talk today about why your body is changing and what you can do about it. Now, I'm specifically going to be talking to the women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s about today's topic. But if you're a man or if you're a younger woman, feel free to continue to listen because it's going to apply to you as well. Because if you're a younger female, then you're going to be going through these phases later on in life. And if you're a man, then guess what? You probably have a sister, a loved one, a mother, a wife, someone who's close to you in your life who's going to go through this or currently is, and it can help you better understand. This way you can kind of hear them out as a person, right? Have a deeper conversation with them, learn to listen to them and not shoo them off as crazy or getting older, because it's important that we all understand the transition in life that women go through. And then we can help them. We can support them mentally, physically, and just be there to make the most out of their life and to not feel like they're going crazy, right? So some of the things that you may be experiencing are that you're gaining weight even though you're doing what used to work in the past, right? The same workouts, the same diets, the same approach that you used when you were younger in your, 20s, maybe even 30s is not working anymore, right? Your moods are all over the place. You're in a good mood one time, you're down in the dump, you're feeling depressed, anxious, your mood is all over the place. And also another thing that you might be experiencing is you're tired, you're bloated, and you're wondering if this is just the way life is now, right? Like, is this what I have to just deal with as my new normal, right? That might be some of the conversations that you're having and that you're experiencing, but I'm here to tell you that no, it doesn't have to be that, right? You're not lazy, you're not broken, and you're not undisciplined. I mean, some people are undisciplined, but most likely if you're listening to this, you are someone who is active with their exercise, is active with looking at eating healthier foods, and you do prioritize your health. So most likely it's not just you being undisciplined. Most likely your biology has just shifted. And we're going to talk about why and how and all of those things in between today, right? Most women are never taught what to expect during this stage of life. They're just kind of thrown into it, right? And then the fact is that we're going to try to bridge the gap between all of the confusion surrounding what I'm talking about and bring some clarity to it. Now, what am I talking about specifically when I talk about this phase in your life, this transition, and why does it just apply to women? Well, I'm talking about perimenopause and I'm talking about menopause. Now, specifically, there are multiple transitions women go through in their life, right? First, it starts with puberty, right? And then if you are a mother and you've given birth, right? You've gone through childbirth. And then the last transition for women is the menopausal transition in life. Now, when I'm talking about perimenopause, this typically starts around, 30s to 40s, right? Everyone is different, so I don't want to put anyone in a box. But perimenopause is when your menstrual cycles, your periods, start to fluctuate. They're irregular, right? You start to get some symptoms with that, like hot flashes. That's like a common one, right? But this is typically when your periods start to fluctuate off their normal rhythm of around 28 days, right? Menopause is a period in time, right? There's no such thing as I'm in menopause. It kind of like is a period in time and then you're post-menopausal, right? So menopause is the moment in time when you've gone 12 months with no period, right? So let's say, you're calculating your cycle, you're tracking it, and you're fluctuating, and then all of a sudden you don't get a period. Well, 12 months from that date, if you no longer have a period, then you are technically in post-menopause. And that is the third transition of a female's biology in their lifespan that we know of, right? That we calculate and that we know of, right? So it's important to understand what these are, when they happen, what are some signals to tell me that I'm experiencing this, and then most importantly, what can you do about it so you don't feel broken, so that you don't have to just accept that this is just the way it is, and you can live out the rest of your life in some joy and some bliss. Because realistically, hundreds of years ago, our lifespan wasn't that long. So maybe women were dying prior to even hitting menopause, right? And they thought that this was like the end of their life. Well, now that our lifespan has increased dramatically, if you go through menopause at the average age of 51, some women are living to 90, 100 years old. You have the other half, the second half of your life is going to be post-menopause. So why would we not want to learn the most we can about it, to optimize it, and to live that second half of your life, so to speak, in joy, right? You go through life trying to figure stuff out. You go through puberty, you might have kids, and then, the kids move out of the house and you're in your 50s and 60s. Why would you want that to be a miserable time for the rest of your time on earth here, right? It's important that we understand this stuff. So what's going on during this transitional period? What's happening is your hormones are fluctuating, right? That's the major thing that's happening, right? Yes, you're getting older in age, but there's some prime hormones that are fluctuating, and I'm going to explain what's happening. So estrogen is a big one. So when you go through perimenopause and eventually menopause, it's going to fluctuate wildly before it drops, right? So typically you're going to see fluctuations up and down. Like if you got your labs done, your chart would be all over the place during perimenopause. And then when you finally go through menopause, your estrogen is going to tank. It won't technically, be eliminated unless you had some medically induced surgery or something like that, but your estrogen is going to drop, right? But then your progesterone, which is the balance to estrogen, right? We need these to be in a good, ratio balance. Progesterone is going to decline more steadily and more rapidly. And then when you hit menopause, essentially it's completely. So what we see in a lot of menopausal women is that they have low estrogen but no progesterone, right? So even though estrogen is extremely low, it's in a relative dominant state compared to progesterone, which causes a lot of these imbalances and a lot of these symptoms that you're experiencing, right? So the drop in the progesterone is going to cause things like mood swings, anxiety, and poor sleep, right? So if that's more in balance, we're going to not experience those things, right? Testosterone usually drops. It's going to lower your libido, lower your energy, and your muscle tone, right? After 30 years old, we have an increase in our muscle breakdown, right? We're not holding on to our muscle density as much, so we need to really prioritize our strength training. But with this, you'll see a drop in testosterone. Cortisol is another big one that we look for, right? Cortisol is typically dysregulated, right? When we are on a normal diurnal pattern, which is how humans operate, we wake up in the morning, and about 30 minutes after we wake up, our cortisol should be at its highest, and then slowly decrease throughout the day until at nighttime, it's going to be at its lowest, and that's going to allow us to go back into sleep. What we see in this phase of women's life is that it's dysregulated, which means it's high when it shouldn't be high, it's low when it shouldn't be low, and it doesn't go through that normal pattern, right? Now, chronic stress makes this worse. And I'm not just talking about stress from work. I'm talking about stress from what you're eating, stress from the environment, and most importantly is perceived stress, right? If we have two people and they both work the same job and all of a sudden their company head has them hop on a big Zoom meeting and fires everybody, right? Fires a whole department of people. Well, the one person might perceive that as like, oh my God, my world is done. Like this is the most traumatic thing ever. The other person might perceive that as, okay, this is not a convenient situation, but where are the opportunities? How can I make this, a beautiful thing and go find the job of my dreams? Things like that. So perceived stress is really important to think about because the way you perceive stress in life is going to determine the fluctuations in our hormones and how we deal with things, right? So if stress is a negative thing on our body, unless it's like exercise, like there are good stressors, don't get me wrong. There are stress is important for our body. But when perceived in such a negative way over a long period of time in a chronic state, meaning that you always have this like sense of stress on your body, it is not good, right? Our body is meant to deal with acute stressors and things like hormetic stress, which are like, hot, cold temperatures, exercise, like that's good for our body to build up its resilience. But if you're in a constant state of worry over the course of years, that is not a good stress. So that's what I mean by chronic stress. So that makes the cortisol fluctuations even worse. And then another big one is insulin resistance. This is when, your body starts to store more fat, especially in the belly, in the visceral fat area, because it's becoming insulin resistant, right? When you eat food, your body sends out insulin to go break down the food and turn it into energy. Well, if there's a constant state of food coming in, and we're never giving our body a rest, or there are other factors that can cause insulin resistance, the pancreas, which secretes the insulin to go do that, it's like the girl who cried wolf. It's like you're always doing it. Well, then eventually it becomes resistant to secreting that insulin, and maybe it's done it so much that it's burnt out the pancreas and we're no longer properly secreting the insulin, or we're not doing it at all, right? So now your body has to go and, fight for its life and store fat for fuel instead of burning it off. So this is another big thing that happens when you become, perimenopausal and menopausal, which is a frustration for many people. And if you've become insulin resistant, you are more likely to have some visceral belly fat. And that is what I talk to a lot of women about wanting to change. It's like, hey, I used to be very active. I still am, but now I can't burn this belly fat off. And I'm working out harder, and I'm incorporating some running, and I'm doing 4 to 5 days a week of some intense workouts. Like, why isn't this working? Well, this is some of the reason, right? If your hormones and your internal system is out of balance, your body is fighting to keep itself alive, and it wants to operate properly. So it's storing fat as a survival mechanism. And it's frustrating to say this, but some of the things that you're doing are making it even worse, right? You're fighting against yourself when you're beating your body up and not reducing stress and doing these intense bouts of cardio, right? It's making things worse, even though in simple terms, we try to equate exercise with fat loss, right? Again, I know this is really hard to comprehend for some of us, but we were taught to eat less and exercise more. We need to be in a caloric deficit. If we are, the math is there, then we should lose weight. Well, unfortunately, your body is not that simple of an equation. It's like a chemistry lab. There's a lot of underlying systems and factors that come into play that your body does to, again, keep itself safe and survive. So it's not as simple as eat less, exercise more if you're a female going through this third transition in your life, right? And it's not fair to you to have that mindset and to keep thinking, I need to keep eating less, and I'm being lazy, I'm being undisciplined. I see so many of you beat yourselves up mentally and just think that, if I could just be more disciplined and work out more, then I'd finally lose the weight. Because that may have worked for you when you were younger. You're in college, you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, and life's busy. You're doing a lot of things, but you're still able to hammer down those workouts, and you were able to stay fit. And that's great. It worked for you. But what worked for you then, when maybe your hormones were in balance and you were at a different phase of your life, won't work now. So we need to take a different approach, and we need to kind of reset our beliefs on, number one, being told random blanket statements like eat less, exercise more, that we need to reframe that and just kind of be open to what is possible. I think even the stuff that I know right now and that the science has told us can change over time. So we need to be open to that. And we need to know that if we've been doing something for a few years and nothing is changing, we need to change our approach and we need to change our mindset. So let's start by being open to these things, right? So common symptoms that you're going to see, or not see, experience during this phase of your life that often get brushed off, right? Fatigue, right? Are you someone who wakes up tired or sluggish throughout the day or has a huge energy dip? Could be you, right? Belly weight gain, we were just talking about this. Visceral fat around the belly that just is stubborn and won't go anywhere. Sleep disruption. Are you someone who's waking up frequently throughout the night, whether you're peeing or not, right? Someone who maybe you are laying in bed and you're wired but tired. Your body's tired, but your mind's wired, so you can't go to sleep. Or you wake up around 1 to 3 in the morning pretty religiously to go to the bathroom, or you just wake up and you can't fall back asleep. This is something that is associated with this phase in your life. Anxiety or irritability, you find yourself getting mad easier, or you find yourself having this anxious feeling about you, about life and the things that are coming up, and you don't know why, right? Brain fog. You are lost for words sometimes. You're not as productive at work. Things like you're having a conversation and you can't remember a simple word or someone's name that you just met. That happens, right? Night sweats and hot flashes. This is one that frequently gets talked about, right? Are you having to change your sheets multiple times a week because you're just in a puddle of sweat while you're sleeping, or you just feel like you need a fan on you at all times because you have your hot flashes, right? Bloating or food sensitivities. You eat food and all of a sudden you feel like you're 4 months pregnant, right? You feel like your stomach is protruding outwards. There's so much pressure there every time that you eat, and maybe even not when you're eating, just at all times. You just feel this constant bloating. These are very common symptoms that would show our hormones are out of balance. Something is, I don't want to say wrong because this happens through this phase of life, but something is out of balance, right? And we need to assess that and correct it, or else we're just going to keep experiencing these symptoms and call them our new normal and just kind of like brush it under the rug. We're not going to tell anybody about it. Oh, this is normal. My doctor told me that I'm just getting older. And no, you shouldn't have to feel like this. Why would you want to feel like a bloatingness in your stomach and not remember your thoughts and sweat at night and not get good sleep? Like, that is not an enjoyable life, in my opinion, right? Like I said, if on average we go through menopause, not we, females, go through menopause at 51 and you live to be 80, 90, why would you want to live 30 to 40 years like that? Hey, hope you're loving the episode so far. Thanks for spending some time with me. I got a quick favor to ask. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast because that's how I know you're getting value from the show. And this way, you never miss an episode. All right, now back to the show. That's just unacceptable, right? So this is why we're here to talk about it. So the next thing I want to bring up is why dieting and cardio no longer work for you, right? When we're in our 20s and 30s, this is what works. Hey, I'm going to find a diet that's going to put me in a caloric deficit, probably something like a low-fat, low-carb diet. I'm going to hop on the treadmill or go for runs multiple times a week, and that kept me sweating and feeling good and burning off those calories, and I stayed at a good weight, you know? But what worked then will not work now because our body is different chemically, mentally, physically. Everything is changed, right? But we need to adapt to that and learn that doing those things are harming us, right? So it's not about working out harder. It's about working out smarter and understanding what's going to, benefit our body to get the results that we want, right? I think a lot of times we view things in absolutes, like workouts need to be an hour, diets need to be low fat, low carb. Like, we just see these things in absolutes when really you're an individual. You need to learn what works for you. And we also need to learn that why wouldn't we want to do the least amount of work for the most amount of effort? Like, if someone told me, like, if I wanted to burn belly fat and someone said, hey, I'm going to have you doing less cardio, working out a little bit less, but it's more structured throughout the week and you're going to get the result you want, rather than go for an hour-long cardio session on the treadmill or for a run 5 days a week, I'm taking the other one. I'm taking the one where it takes less work, it's more structured, and I'm going to get the result. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We don't want to do the hour-long workout. We don't want to go for a 5-mile run. We want to feel good. We want to have energy. We want to look at ourselves in the mirror and be confident and feel good in our clothes. That's what we want. So why would we not want to take the approach that maybe is, breaking your limiting beliefs and seems a little crazy, but actually gets you the result? That's like if you work a job and you have your salary. Let's say you make $100K a year, right? And you work 40 hours a week. If I said, hey, you're going to get this promotion, you're going to make double the amount you make, and you're going to work 20 hours a week. Why would you say, oh, I don't know about that. I don't think it'll work. I don't want to do that. Well, no, I'd take less work for more money. I mean, heck, wouldn't you? So same thing with our bodies and what works now. So we are transitioning the way our bodies and internal organs and systems work. So we need to take a different approach. I know that was a long-winded speech about it, but it needs to get hammered down that our body is changing, right? Not only are we a different age, even though that's made up, biologically, internally, things are shifting. So we need to adapt to that, right? So just remember that too much cardio is screwing with our cortisol levels. It's elevating our cortisol levels at probably times that we don't want it to, and it's going to create that unregulated system and create our body to store onto fat rather than burn it. Right? So it's it's a little more complicated than that, but just understand that if you were doing long bouts of cardio, it is extremely breaking down your body, elevating your cortisol, and not allowing your body to recover and rest and be at a state of calm, right? And balance out its hormones naturally. It's just kind of always in fight or flight mode. We're doing that intentionally. Like we're putting ourselves through this cardio and it's making things worse, right? So just remember, elevated cardio, elevated cortisol is going to put our body in fat storage mode. Then calorie restriction. So these are the two main things: work out more, so the cardio, and then eat less. So calorie restriction. It's going to often lead to a slower metabolism. Our body needs fuel, right? We need to fuel it, and so our engine can grow and burn off more calories and be at a higher metabolic rate. So if we're underfeeding our body, it's got to store it, right? You're slowing the furnace down and it's not able to burn fuel. So it's not able to burn fat. So slower metabolism. It's going to be a loss of muscle mass because your muscle needs protein to thrive. There were studies done in a group where all they did was increase their protein and they were able to increase muscle mass. So by being humans, we walk, we move our bodies. So just by simply increasing your protein intake, you're going to increase your muscle mass. So if you are restricting your calories, most likely you're not eating enough protein, therefore we're going to lose our muscle mass. And like I said before, after the age of 30, our rate of decrease of muscle mass increases. So like, let's say you lose 1% of your muscle over time when you're, up to 30. It increases to 3%. So we're losing muscle at a faster rate than we were prior to this phase of our life. So it's very, very important that we're nourishing our body and not calorie restricting ourselves from nutrients. And then the other one is there's a greater hormonal imbalance, right? Like I said, at this phase of our life, naturally progesterone and estrogen tank, cortisol gets dysregulated, like a lot of these things are happening. And when we're not fueling our body, guess what those hormones need to go and regulate themselves? Fuel. It needs cholesterol. Cholesterol begins the process of hormones, right? Hormones get metabolized from cholesterol. So if we're not eating the right foods and nourishing ourselves, it's going to create a greater hormonal imbalance. So remember, this isn't just about working harder, it's about working smarter with your physiology, learning about the systems of your body, how they work, why they work, and so that we can do the proper adjustments and lifestyle shifts to listen to our body and to give it what it needs, right? Not just fighting against it saying, work out, work out, work out. Listen to your body, learn how its systems work, and make the proper adjustments, right? Now, the last part is what can we do about it? Because I always like to give a lot of information out here, but it's not helpful if I don't give you action steps to actually go do something about it. Because the goal is that we take this, we take action, we improve our life. I'm not just sitting here for my health to yap on a screen. I want you guys to be able to take action steps and go and improve your life. Whether you meet me in person or you work with me, I don't care. But if you listen to this and this message resonates with you and you take action, I've done my job. That's all I can say, right? So the first thing is we need to create some hormone-friendly habits, right? Things that are going to make our hormones regulate themselves in a better way, right? In simple terms, right? So one thing that we can do is, acquire protein and build some muscle. So your goal on average would be to get 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. Now, I have a general rule of thumb for all women is that you would want to have 1 gram of protein per your goal body weight. So let's say you wanted to weigh 150 pounds, your goal would be around 150 grams of protein every single day. And an easy way to do that is to hit 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to prioritize your muscle building, right? Your muscles need the amino acids from the protein to go and build and retain the muscle, right? So if we don't want our muscle to deteriorate, we need to have enough protein to do that, right? Another thing is it's going to keep us satiated. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. So if you're having 30 to 40 grams of protein in every single meal, most likely you're going to reduce the cravings that you once had for sweets and salty things in between
or later at night. You're going to be so full and satiated that you won't need those things, right? So it's a double whammy there. Then focus on resistance training. Everyone is different. I don't like to have blanket statements, so don't always take what I'm saying as an absolute, right? Let's say you're someone who already works out. Maybe you just transition to resistance training 3 times a week, and that's what you do. But maybe you've never worked out before, and you just want to start with 1 or 2 days a week of doing some body weight stuff. Then that's where you are, right? You need to meet yourself where you're at and not take it to the extreme. So if you've never exercised before and all you've done was walk or done some things like that, and you want to implement some resistance training, well, guess what? Maybe you start with doing some body weight squats in your living room and you do 10 of them, right? You do 3 sets of 10, and that's your workout. That's fine. You need to build yourself up. Or you could be someone who's always worked out their entire life and they need to dial it down. Maybe they're working out 6 days a week and they need to go to 2 or 3 of just some strict resistance training. Everyone's different, and just understand that it is important to get some resistance training in to keep that lean muscle mass, right? Next is to support your sleep and to lower stress. Number 1, sleep is when we burn fat. Sleep is when we go and restore all of our systems in our body. Sleep is the miracle drug that we all need to optimize, right? So one thing that you can do is to create a bedtime and wind down routine. So if a lot of people have a morning routine. Their alarm goes off at this time and they do these couple things in the morning and then they're ready to go to work or get their day started. But a lot of us don't have that wind down routine. Now, as a female going through, peri or you're in post-menopausal, it's going to be really important for our stress balance and our regulation of our hormones to have a wind down routine. Maybe something like a hot bath or a hot shower or some meditation or some deep breathing. And more specifically, an optimal sleeping environment where it's cool in your room, it's dark in your room. There's no external lights or noises. And you're able to get to bed at a consistent time, right? Like if you go to bed at 9:30 every single night, even on the weekends, that's going to really help you rather than if it's all over the place where you're going to bed at different times. You're staying up until midnight watching your drama series on Netflix, right? That's stimulating the fight or flight and not allowing ourselves to fall into deep, restful sleep. So a bedtime routine is huge. So another thing is avoiding high-intensity workouts really at any time, but especially on an empty stomach and or late at night. So like I said, your cortisol is highest in the morning and decreases throughout the day. So if at late at night we're doing this hard workout, it's spiking your cortisol and waking your body back up. So now that's going to increase cortisol. It's going to decrease our melatonin production, and we're not going to be able to get to bed or fall into a deep, full, restful sleep at the time that we would like to. And then another thing I touched on, but I want to repeat, is to have some tools in your tool belt, like breath work, like going for a walk, like a yoga practice or a stretching practice, whatever works with you and whatever phase you're at in your life. But just know that something as simple as breath work is something that anyone can do, right? I don't care how busy you are. You can take literally 1 minute and do a breath work technique like box breathing, like something where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 7 counts, and then you exhale through your mouth through pursed lips for 8 seconds, right? You do that for a couple rounds, and automatically you've hacked your nervous system to get out of fight or flight and to calm down, right? That is something that you can do in the morning when you wake up, before bed, or in the middle of the day if you find yourself getting a little bit of stress. Doesn't matter how busy you are, you can do that one. Next, we're going to focus on your gut and liver health. So your gut holds 80% of your immune system. It also is very important in the metabolism of your hormones and the way your food gets distributed to your body. When estrogen is relatively high in the peri and menopausal years, we need to be able to detox it out of our body. And that happens through the liver. So maybe some of you have heard of congested liver before, but if your liver is backed up and that's the primary detoxification organ, then estrogen is not able to properly be detoxed out of your body. So we can do things like prioritize fiber, your cruciferous vegetables, and make sure you're hydrated because hydration also helps speed up detoxification, right? Another thing you can do is to avoid alcohol, processed foods, and artificial sweeteners. because these things go and inhibit your liver from detoxifying, right? Alcohol is essentially a poison. So when you drink it, your liver must filter all of that out, right? And if your liver's backed up already, now it's overburdened with trying to process the alcohol plus being backed up. So now you're getting spillover into your blood supply, and that's creating more toxins in our body, creating that hormonal imbalance. Processed foods, same things. There's a lot of seed oils, a lot of glyphosate, which is they spray that on the crops to keep bugs and mold and stuff away, but it's a chemical, right? So your body has to then go detoxify it out and process it. And if we're overburdened, again, it's not happening to the level that we need it to. And same thing with artificial sweeteners. Your body does not want them, so it's got to process them out. So those are things that we can avoid or greatly reduce. Another thing you can do is to track your symptoms, right? We all have heard about tracking your water intake, your steps, maybe your macros. Maybe we're comfortable doing those things. But how often are we tracking the way we feel? There was a list of common symptoms that I put up there, but you're an individual. You have your own symptoms. So why not write them down? Say, hey, every day this week I've had hot flashes and slept in a puddle of sweat. It's been very uncomfortable. And then you start doing these things that can, improve the way you feel and balance your hormones. And you're like, oh, wow, I only, got sweaty in bed 3 times out of the week. My mood was much better, right? Are you tracking these things, whether you do them on your phone, in your notes app, in a physical journal? I like to write things down, but take some time and reflect. Maybe before bedtime, you're writing in a journal and you're reviewing the day. How did it go? How did you feel, right? How was your energy? How did you feel? What were some of your symptoms? How frequently, how intense were they? And then you track that over time and you can look back and say, wow, I don't have that brain fog like I used to have. I'm way more sharp. I have way more energy in the morning rather than waking up very tired, right? So it's important to track your symptoms. And then the last thing that I'll mention is testing, right? There's a lot of baseline foundational things that you can do to improve your situation, which we just went over some of them. But if you're really, into data and getting to the in-depth look of what your specific body is doing, you can always get testing done. Now that looks like, food sensitivities test, a hormones test, gut tests for your stool. There's a lot of different tests that I can actually run to look at those markers and paint the picture of what's happening in your body. Now that's very empowering. So I do always suggest people do the foundational stuff first. It's all free. These are just mindset shifts and habit shifts that we have to do throughout the day that can improve. But if you really, really, really want answers and you've tried all those other things, you can also do some testing to find out specifically what's happening within your body. So I hope you guys take this. And again, if you listened all the way through and you're a male, I encourage you to maybe share this with a female in your life. Maybe someone is struggling with these symptoms and they're in this phase of their life where they're transitioning into menopause and they need to learn more. Share this with them and also be empathetic, right? You might say, let's say it's your wife and you're listening to this and you're like, me and her, we're doing a diet, we're working out and I'm losing weight, but she's not. Well, guess what? You're different than her, right? So don't just say, well, she's probably, snacking while she's at work and she's not taking it as seriously. No, she is. You're just different, right? And that's okay. But have a little empathy and listen to her, right? Another big thing is that we just want to shoo things off, right? But if you were more open to having this conversation and just listening, right? Listen to what they have to say. Let them go into the details of their problems so that they can get it off their chest. That helps with the stress as well. So again, if you guys enjoyed this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this message with someone that you love. And I will see you guys next week.
Hey, thanks for spending some time with me on today's episode. I hope you got a ton of value from it. If we're not connected on Instagram yet, let's change that. Hit me up at Sean Calhoun _. That's SEAN Calhoun _. Shoot me a DM. Let me know what you think of the show or if you got any questions about how to level up your health. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you on the next episode.